Good morning and welcome to the Keilor East RSL Anzac Day Dawn Service 2025. We will shortly be commencing our service. I ask you to ensure that your mobile phone and any connected device is set to silent or turned off. As a reminder to those who are able to please stand, remove your headdress at the saying of the ode, sounding of last post and singing of the national anthems. We at Keilor East RSL acknowledge the traditional custodians throughout Australia. We recognise their continuing connection to land, sea and waters. We pay our respect to elders past and present. We also acknowledge the commitment of Indigenous servicemen and women, both past and present, to Australia. I ask those who are able to please stand as we mount the catafalque party. Guard Commander. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. I'd like to now welcome Mr. John Johnson, OAM, President Keilor East RSL, for the welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Fellow veterans, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen. I acknowledge Mr. Ben Carroll MP, State Member for Nidri, Deputy Premier of Victoria, Minister for Education, Minister for WorkSafe and the TAC, Mr. Danny Pearson MP, Minister for Economic Growth and Jobs, Minister for Finance. Danny has sent an apology and will be represented by Mr. Rod Goody. Councillor Ava Adams, Mayor of Moonee Valley City Council, accompanied by Councillors Deputy Mayor, Councillor Fran Cosgrove, Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Hamish Jones, Councillor John Seepeck, and Major General, Mayor, I've just promoted you, Major Branden Holmes, OC Delta Company 5-6 Royal Victorian Regiment. I welcome you all here today on this, the 110th anniversary of the Anzac's first landing on the beaches of Gallipoli, Turkey on the 25th of April 1915, on what we now know as Anzac Cove. I thank you for your attendance and humbly request that you join in the service whenever possible. Our intention is not to glorify war, but purely to show respect to the numerous troops who gave their lives in the service of their countries, and to those that served and survived only to retain the trauma of war for the remainder of their lives. There will be a reading of the local veterans that were killed at Gallipoli later on in the service. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'd now like to call on Miss Jennifer Brown, Senior Vice President, Keilor East RSL, for the Anzac prayer.
The Anzac prayer. Lord God, help us this day to remember the sacrifice of the first Anzacs, Australians and New Zealanders, and the generation of men, women, children who have died in the cause of liberty and peace. Help us to remember those who still bear the physical and mental scars and disability of their service. Help us to remember the widows, girlfriends, parents and orphans and all those who waited in vain for the return of a loved one. Help us to remember the mateship, the agony and courage and compassion of war service, but save us from ever glorifying the horrors and tragedy of war. Lord God, help us to remember.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now I'd like to call on our guest speaker, Major Branden Holmes.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you as a representative of the Australian Defence Force. As mentioned, I'm Officer Commanding Delta Company of the 5th 6th Battalion of the Royal Victoria Regiment, and the soldiers before you also represent Delta Company. Delta Company and the battalion trace a heritage to numerous units, including the 58th 32nd Battalion, which importantly for us here today, as this battalion was originally formed as the Essendon Rifles over a century ago. Therefore, it is a privilege to speak to you today as a custodian of this heritage and your history. A short history of the Essendon Rifles. They were formed in 1913 as a citizen military force. Recruits came from the Essendon area, including nearby suburbs. The unit was located in the building opposite the old Essendon Town Hall on Mount Alexander Road. The Rifles formed a strong relationship with the local community and the Essendon Council, the forebearer of the Moonee Valley City Council. The Essendon Council organised many local fetes and community events to support the Essendon boys with the outbreak of World War I in 1914. The battalion fought in many campaigns with honour, including, importantly, at Gallipoli, including the landing on this morning 110 years ago. The reason we are meeting here this morning. And we meet here not to celebrate battle or glorify war, but to remember those who've served in our country during conflict and crisis, from the pre-Federation conflicts to the recent 2021 evacuation of Kabul, Afghanistan, by soldiers and officers of the 1st Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment. Anzac Day is not merely a date or some remote campaign, but rather a spirit. It is a time to reflect on the past generations of Australians who in hardship displayed courage, discipline, self-resilience, self-respect, resourcefulness and mateship. The young men of Gallipoli were the first Anzacs, ordinary young Australians and New Zealanders doing their best in a campaign of intense ferocity. Their casualties were horrendous. Nearly 8,700 Australians were killed and 18,500 were wounded at Gallipoli. And to what end? As the campaign was a failure. And yet, of all the battlefields in which Australians died, it is the Gallipoli campaign that has come to symbolise the Australian soldier. The essence of Gallipoli was that in the face of adversity and defeat, the Australian spirit triumphed. We too remember those who served on the home front, supplying moral strength and material to our fighting forces. For their service was no lesser to Australia. Notably, just across the river from here at the former Maribyrnong explosive factory, where thousands of local men and women worked to support soldiers with equipment and supplies in both World War. We also remember the wives, children and extended families of the previous generation, where generations now not have to know what it's like to follow the progress of far-off battles in newspapers or newsreels. They have never searched with the dread of the casualty list, nor felt the grief spread through the community while waiting for official confirmation of the death of a husband, a father, a brother, a son, a friend, or a neighbour. Military service is and always has been shouldered with our families. We must remember that those that stood strong at home so our men and women can stand strong in wars, conflict, peacekeeping operations. The fundamental purpose of today has been and should continue to be to pay homage to our veterans and those that gave their lives. In doing so, we ensure our recognition by youth that peace and freedom have always required a sacrifice in the past. Those we honour have left Australia a tradition of courage, selflessness and a fine reputation to follow for the future. I've enjoyed this opportunity to be with you today and consider it a real honour to make this Anzac Day address, lest we forget.
Thank you, sir. I'd now like to call on Mrs. Alva Lewis to recite the Grieving Mother.
A grieving mother. I had no skills to offer. I had no wealth to spend. Mine was a greater glory. I had a son to send. Silently, the shades of the evening gather around my lonely door. Silently, they bring for me the face I shall see no more. Thank you.
Thank you, Alva. I'd now like to call on Mr. Brian Woodward to recite The Quiet Old Guy.
The quiet old guy who kept to himself, ignored by the young hipsters arranging the shelf. Because he's not cool and he gets in the way, he just wants a quick chat, it'd make his day. But you'll never know what he did in his prime, as you ignore him and you won't give him your time. He's slow in his movements, his old jumper is torn. He bores you with stories of when he was born. In times long ago, when he was young, strong and keen, he spent this whole life chasing his dream. With honour and integrity, and learning his trade, he's sorry that he wasted your time and your day. The girl that he married was his childhood sweetheart. She passed long ago, and it tore him apart. He comes to your shop in hope that one day you'll give him some time and he'll be on his way. He feels so alone and counts down the days when he'll see the dear sweetheart and memories they made. Did he mention that his dream was interrupted by war? That he did his duty and answered the call. On trenches and death and blood and lost mates, surrounded by men who were brainwashed to hate. He's too modest to mention that he saved his platoon. They gave him some medals along with his wounds. Of killing and dying, and flies and disease, the calls and the trenches and ignoring their pleas. He'll never tell you how he got that scar, why loud noises scare him. You'll think it's bizarre. Why he walks with a limp and uses a cane, why he gathers each year to honour the slain. His mates are all gone now. He lived them all out. Each April they gathered to work at the stalls, to sell badges and poppies and to honour the dead. You stare and you wonder, what's wrong with his head? On 2 days a year, he finally belongs to a tribe of brave men, not forgotten but long gone. A chest full of medals and a day with the lads, a beer and some two-up to toast to comrades. Yeah, his footsteps are shuffled and unsure in his ways. He potters around and wears his beret. Their faces get fewer and fewer each year, but right now he matters. He enjoys all the cheers. He sits alone in his home, his joints now inflamed. He was special forces and as tough as they came. The horrors he saw and the actions he did, in the name of Queen and country, just to earn a quid. Would make most men cry and pray for loved ones, while the young play war games, and we still send our sons. But you'll never know what he did in his prime, as you ignore him and you won't give him your time. That quiet old guy who keeps to himself, ignored by the young hipsters arranging the shelf.
Thank you, Brian. I'd now like to call on Mrs. Anita Johnson to recite the Anzac Requiem.
On this day, above all days, we recall those who served in war and did not return to receive the grateful thanks of the nation. We remember those who still sleep where they were left, amid the holly scrub in the valleys, and on the ridges of Gallipoli, on the rock and terraced hills of Palestine, and in the lovely cemeteries of France. We remember those who lie asleep in ground beneath the shimmering haze of the Libyan desert, at Bardia, Derna, Tobruk, and amid the mountain passes and olive groves of Greece and Crete, and the rugged snow-capped hills of Lebanon and Syria. We remember those who lie buried in the rank jungles of Malaya and Burma in New Guinea, and in the distant isles of the Pacific. We remember those who lie buried amid loving friends in the motherland and in our own far north. We remember those who lie in unknown resting places in almost every land, and those gallant men whose grave is the unending sea. Especially do we remember those who died as prisoners of war, remote from their homeland and from the comforting presence of their kith and kin. We think of those of our women's services who gave their lives in our own and foreign lands and at sea, and those who proved to be, in much more than name, the sisters of our fighting men. We recall too the staunch friends who fought beside our men and their first Anzac Day, men of New Zealand who helped to create the name Anzac. We recall all those who gave their lives in the Royal Navy, the British Army, the Royal Air Force, the Merchant Service, and in British Commonwealth and Allied forces. And we think of those British men and women who fell when, for the second time in history, their nation and its kindred stood alone against the overwhelming might of an oppressor. We think of every man and woman who in those crucial hours died, so that the lights of freedom and humanity might continue to shine. We think of those gallant men who died in Korea, Malaya, Borneo, Vietnam, Timor, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and in peacekeeping and peace-enforcing commitments, assisting to defend the Commonwealth and other countries of the free world against a common enemy. May these all rest proudly in the knowledge of their achievement, and may we and our successors in that heritage prove worthy of their sacrifice.
Thank you, Anita. Now I'd like to call on Miss Bruna Norrish to recite the Vale.
Members who have passed since November 2024. Jeffrey Noonan, Raymond Whiting, Steve Rollis, Peter Seville, Ray Davey, Elaine King, Ken Taylor, Joe Walsh, Michael Phillips, Barry Cheatley, Val Campbell, Fred Dooligal, Ron Wiles, Brian Maloney, Vin McCambridge, Ken Byrne, and Gordon Bell. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruna. I'd now like to ask anyone who is laying a wreath on the program to please go over, prepare to lay the wreath. Essendon North Primary School, represented by Samuel and Matthew and Kate. Over Newton Anglican College, represented by Carly and Joshua. Rosehill Secondary College, represented by the school captains Hugo and Delcine. Keilor Primary, represented by Eden, Mavinia, Lee and Lincoln. Keilor Heights Primary. Aberfeldy Primary, represented by Abby. Buckley Park College, Tien and Fan, who are the school captains, and Rafferty. First Moonee Pond Scout Group, Charlie and Oscar. Mr. John Johnson, OAM, President, Keilor East RSL. Miss Jenny Brown, Senior Vice President, Keilor East RSL in Region 3. Major Branden Holmes, representing Delta Company, 5-6 Royal Victoria Regiment. Mr. Jack Grubb, Merchant Navy. Mr. Brian Woodward, Australian Peacemakers and Keepers. The Mayor, Councillor Ada Adams, representing the City of Moonee Valley, with Councillors Deputy Mayor Fran Cosgrove, Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Hamish Jones and Councillor John Sypek. Mr. Ben Carroll, MP, State Member for Nidri, Deputy Premier, Minister for Education, Minister for Work, Safe and the TAC. Mr. Danny Pearson, MP, represented today by Mr. Rod Gurry. Danny is the Minister for Economic Growth and Jobs, Minister for Finance. Ms. Louisa Levitas and Ms. Leonie Crichton, animals killed in all wars. Mr. Ed Barton, Royal Australian Regiments. Mr. Brian Sheehan, Vietnam Veterans, Northwest Region. Mrs. Alva Lewis, Essendon Legacy Widows. Mr. Edward Eastman, JP, Western National Service Association. Mr. Robert Brown, 5832nd Battalion Association. Miss Bruna Norrish, Women's Veterans Network Australia. Mr. Ross Darrigan and Miss Emily Darrigan, 39th Infantry Battalion Association, 1941 to 43. Mrs. Jeanette Burke, on behalf of the Keilor East RSL management and staff. Mr. Kevin Cromie, Keilor East RSL Bowls Club. Acting Senior Sergeant Luke Ndali, Moonee Ponds Police. Mr. Justin Navas, Essendon SES and First Responders. Mrs. Amanda Stevenson and Miss Emily Stevenson, on behalf of the late father and grandfather Ron King, Royal Australian Navy. Mr. John Cordwell, on behalf of his late father Brian, RAN, and his pop, O'Rad of Tobruk. Miss Megan Stapleton, Moonee Valley Brass Band. Mr. Bruce Anderson, President, Rotary Club of Strathmore. Mr. Jeff Brown, Keilor East Provis. Mr. Steve Bulmer, Keilor Provis. Mr. Neville Duncan and Miss Nina Krasinski, Karenia Society. Mr. Nick Murphy for Airfield West Football Club. James Camerino and Ryan Titch for the Aberfeldy Sports Club. Milo Watts and Nate Redan, Essendon Doodle Stars Football Club. Mr Billy Wigmore, East Keilor Cricket Club. Mr Bob Madigan, East Keilor Football Club. Is there anybody else who would like to lay a wreath? Please do so now. I'd now like to call on Mr John Johnson, OAM, Gallipoli Veterans, KIA.
This is a list of some of the local diggers who were killed on the 25th of April 1915 at Gallipoli, who were residing within the now area of Moonee Valley City Council. Ascot Vale, Abraham Evans, Rise Emlyn Griffith, Alexander James MacArthur, Hamish McNabb, Robert Morrison, Trafford Sizzle Pettigrew, Walter Joseph Steith, James John Twining, Albert Evans, Kensington, Frank Trickey, Patrick Francis Cronin, Newmarket, Lindsay Gordon MacDonald, Leslie Williamson, Flemington, John Sinclair Angus, James Neville Carless, Edward Wilfred Jr., Edward Butterworth Danaher, Edward James Edgley, William Henry Wills, and Vivian Malcolm Wills, who are cousins. Moonee Ponds, Alan Melrose Hayes, Charles Edwin Jones, Harris Gilchrist Lennox, Joseph Leo Mulcairns. Essendon, John Knox Adams, Charles Bale, William Corbett Hill, Colin Ernest Robertson. The following are a list of the members who were killed after the first day of Gallipoli. Moonee Ponds, Frederick Anthony Hicks, Frederick Theodore Waters, James Seeley, John Melvin, Alexander Thomas Smith, Charles Leonard Whitaker, Douglas Body, Leslie Harold Reeve, John Christian Hayweg, Noel Charles Wheatley, Samuel Arthur Roberts, Alexander Thomas Swift. Essendon, Stanley John Golding, Edward Charles Perkins, Robert Kerr, Kenneth Lee Walker, John William Woods, John Tytherley, Cyril Andrew Burden, James Edmund Marshall, George Phillip, Walter McIntosh King, Charles Gordon Wood, George Henry Peter Nelson, John Blundell, Matthew Brown, Henry Cowell, John MacPhail, William Walter Elliott, Edward Laurence McMahon, Archibald MacDonald, Thomas Hudson, Nesbitt, Quinton Smith, Robert Smith, Hale Haddon Chapman. Ascot Vale, Gerald Redmond Griffith, David William Cunningham, Thomas Edward Mulcahy, James Earl Brooke, George Garner, Frederick Allen Hicks, William Marshall, Arthur Ernest Rogers, Charles Scarness, Charles Hudson Bonifan, Edward Gilchrist, Arthur Walker Hughes, James Wilkie McJunkin, Philip Edwin Shepherd, Alexander Thomas Swift, Jim Derby, Peter Constantine Vassy, George Thomas Whitehill. Kensington, Edgar Simmons, Harry Webb, DCM, Alfred West, Alfred Braco, Thomas Henry Aldridge, James Cadell, Charles Frederick Johnson, Rupert Alex Palmer, Arthur James Pawley, Flemington, William James Farquharson, John Eddie Phillips, Percival Williams, James Cunningham. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'd now like to ask all who are able to please stand and invite Mr. Peter Dodds to recite the ode.
They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we'll left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Thank you, Peter. I'd like to ask those who are able to please remain standing for the singing of the national anthems of New Zealand, followed by the national anthem of Australia. And I'd like to invite Miss Amanda Stevenson and Miss Emily Stevenson.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains, then let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath our radiant Southern Cross, we'll toil with hearts and hands to make this commonwealth of us renowned over the lands. For those who've come across the seas, we've boundless plains to share. With courage let us all combine to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please remain standing while the guard is dismissed. Guard Commander.
Inwards, everybody, way up.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes today's service. I'd like to thank the members of the 5th 6th Battalion Royal Victoria Regiment Delta Company for being the Cataflag Party today. To all our readers and to all those who laid a wreath, thank you. Singers Amanda and Emily Stevenson, Piper, Barry Moore, Bugler Fiona Redding, the club staff and all the volunteers who assisted to make it happen. Thank you, everyone. I'd also like to thank all of you who attended. On behalf of the President and Committee, I would like to invite you back to the club rooms for the traditional gunfire breakfast, or egg and bacon rolls, a tot of rum and the beer. There's sausage sizzle in the car park. There donation tins around if you'd like to donate. I'd ask all current and past service members who are here today to please see a committee member and make sure you receive a wristband. Yep, free beer, even better. Thanks for your attendance, enjoy your morning at the RSL and have a great day. Well done. Thanks, boss. Well done. Yeah.
Yep.
Corgi.
Yeah, we
Cross
think
with something.
we think Corgi Border Collie.
Do you mind if I sit here?
Sure. Yeah, Corgi Border Collie is what we think.
It looks like a Corgi. He wasn't the dog making a nice bark. You hear that dog bark?
Yeah, I think so.
Every time the guys, what were they doing? When they stand to attention, yeah.
Yeah.
He just went boom.
Oh, where do you get those?
Inside.
Oh, okay. I can't take care of them, so it's fine. I'm happy with that.
What's his name?
Titch. T-I-T-C-H.
Boy, Jill.
Boy.
Boy. Yeah.
We rescued him at 3. So we
How
didn't.
old is he now?
About 13 maybe?
Oh, wow, that's good.
Yeah, he's doing pretty good. Had some health issues. But cancer in the mouth and stuff.
Oh, really?
And we did a whole bunch of there was surgery, and there was some extreme surgery they were recommending, and we didn't do that. And then there was chemo, and that didn't really work. So now we're just.
So when they do chemo on a dog, what do they do?
For him, they just injected stuff.
Oh, okay.
Probably once. It was once a month. But he wasn't liking them.
No.
Hate going into the vet.
That's a good boy.
Well, they gave him, I think, on average, 1 to 2 years, and he outlived that. So far.
Oh, good on him. Good on him.
Yeah, he's doing good.
Yeah, you do what you can, and then you just. It's probably a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, I just. I didn't even ask, sorry.
That's okay.
I saw you. Oh, I gather you were giving him bread.
No,
yeah, well, the sausage, yeah.
One more bit, there you are.
Yeah, he gets a lot of food you probably shouldn't have from a grandparent. So.
Oh, okay.
You've got to cut with it. Otherwise you've got to climb. Like to walk that far?
Did you sit here the whole time, or?
No, we're just near that.
Yeah.
Where are you?
We always sit in the same place. The seats that are here all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just one of those ones
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Just come early.
We got here early, but because I've got the dog, I don't really want to sit in a seat.
Yeah. Fair. Focused on that coffee. I reckon these are new ones. I don't.
Yeah, I know. I reckon they are.
We didn't come last. We didn't come last year, remember?
I told people where to go for that.
Good work, man.
They're pretty recent, but I think they were here last
Maybe
year.
that's we went to Binyons last year. Yeah, all the Dawn Service.
Yeah, I've been coming here since 2021, just because it's within walking distance.
Yeah.
But for the 100th year, I was down in the city for that one.
Yeah, was it good?
It was pretty good.
Yeah, we're going to go next year to the city. I've never been, Belinda has, but you've been lots of times, haven't you?
I used to go to the one, because my dad used to come, so I used to go there.
And did they go to the, did he, oh, so he
Dad didn't go to the Dawn Service, he used to march, but we used to go in so early.
Oh, so he didn't want to even go to the
No, it's such a big day for them, like, because he would go, like when they marched, a long way.
Yeah.
Then they'd go back and then they'd have their thing Carlton.
Yeah, I went to the Dawn Service and was thinking to stay for the march, but it's such a long time between that and when the march starts that staying out there all day.
So it was too much for them. But he loved it. He must have been
way he said, when I was home, he said, no, I'm not doing it anymore, too bloody old. I said, well, don't go there, you've been for nothing. He's 80. 82 to be 82. But then so I'm from New Zealand. But then I saw a Snapchat from my sister this morning and he was there, so I'm glad that he went.
Oh, so he's in New Zealand?
Yeah, all my family live in New Zealand, yeah. So of course, with a 2-hour time difference. Yeah, when I was getting up at 4 o'clock and 4:45 Vale already.
Yeah, done.
Doing theirs, we're nearly done, exactly. So, this place here, they used to have a proper breakfast, like, it was like...
Oh, like scrambled eggs.
Spaghetti.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
That's what I remember from the city, is they had...
Oh, really?
At least 10 years ago they did.
Yeah.
Gunfire breakfast.
Yeah. And in New Zealand they had